Hello, Tributes, and welcome to part 2 of the 195th Hunger Games. Before I begin, I would like to say that unlike the 190th Hunger Games, I will not be doing a previously on the 195th Hunger Games, especially because this part and part 4 are pretty short, and like at that point, I'd just be writing just I'd basically just be rewriting the part in the previously on the 195th Hunger Games. I'd just be reposting all of it. So at that point, if I was doing before the games, it would be just like part 2 and part 3 would be the same part. It wouldn't be worth it, but whatever, it's fine. I'm not going to be doing previously on the 195th Hunger Games because for some parts it's going to be too much work. Like the previous part, way too much work. A lot of tributes died before the games, and that's all I was able to get through in part 1. And so yeah, or that's all I wanted to get through in part 1. I did that on purpose. But anyways, yeah. So none of the 6 parts are going to have previously on the 195th Hunger Games. Now that we've gotten that underway, let's get into part 2 of the 195th Hunger Games. As the mentors took their tributes to the launch tubes, Arminio wasn't able to get onto the hovercraft. For reasons unknown to Arminio, the peacekeepers weren't allowing him to get onto the hovercraft with the tributes and other mentors. Once Ophelia realized this, she tried to run out to Arminio, but it was too late. Eventually, more peacekeepers came behind Arminio and put his hands behind his back, arresting him. It was revealed to the capital, and therefore Arminio, that Araminta had died from her injuries sustained from her brutal fight with Arminio, and so Arminio was to be arrested and taken to the prison on the south end of the capital. As Araminta was being As Arminio was being taken to the prison, he looked around in the car he was being taken in. He looked at one of the peacekeepers and seemed to recognize this peacekeeper. This peacekeeper was revealed to be 35-year-old Benji Triton, victor of the 177th Hunger Games. This was odd, as Arminio had been told by peacekeepers that no victor would ever want to associate with him again. As the prisoner transport truck continued to drive through a massive desert, Benji whispered to Arminio that he had understood the circumstances of which caused Arminio to fight back, and that he would do whatever it took to protect Arminio until he could find a way out. Arminio appreciated this, although he had no clue how Benji was going to do this on his own. Arminio made his concerns clear to Benji, to which Benji replied and whispered, "Do you really think I'm going to be doing this on my own?" Benji then motioned to the peacekeeper next to him. The peacekeeper then lifted their mask slightly so as to not be noticed by the other peacekeepers in the truck, but still be seen by Arminio. The second peacekeeper was 32-year-old Callista Yaroon, victor of the 180th Hunger Games. Benji then whispered that the now 33-year-old Gleam Backrock, victor of the 178th Hunger Games, has been working as a guard in the prison for 15 years now, since she turned 18. So, Gleam would be there too. He also stated that Maximus was going to try and transfer over to the prison as well. He said all this to say that he was not doing this alone. When the truck arrived in the prison, Benji whispered for Arminio to follow his lead and to not ask questions. Arminio would respond to this with a nod and would follow Benji and Callista through the entrance of the prison to where the onboarding process would begin. Arminio would get his fingerprints done, putting him in the system. He then got his mugshots, which did not please him, but he did it anyways so as to not cause another big scene. As Arminio waited to be questioned in the interrogation room, he noticed an alarm going off outside the room. He then heard gunshots and cheering as a prison break was ongoing just outside of the room. Although these prisoners were swiftly handled as they got past the interrogation rooms, Arminio was still worried about his friends Benji, Gleam, and Callista. Eventually, head peacekeeper in the prison, Gleam Backrock, came into the room with two peacekeepers following behind her. Gleam motioned towards the one-way mirror on the wall to Arminio's left, and Arminio seemed to understand what was happening, and that people were listening in on the interrogations, and so they couldn't talk in the open about plans that Benji and Callista were able to. After a long interrogation, Gleam picked Arminio up from under his arms and dragged him to his cell. This would cause Arminio to act as though Gleam was hurting him by doing this in order to not blow their cover. As Gleam put Arminio in his cell, she muttered, "Operation Jailbreak." This confused Arminio, and Gleam could tell. She explained to Arminio that his friends in the capital are trying to come up with a plan to break Arminio out. The plan being referred to as Operation Jailbreak. So yeah, guys, that's the end of part 2. I know, it's a pretty short one. Part 2, the arrest. Come back next week for part 3. If you guys enjoyed this video, then be sure to slap that like button. And as always, stay awesome. Good. Bye, everybody.